Okay. Um. Hmm. Is it going? What am I looking at here? Um. Hmm. What the fuck? Wait a minute. Window capture. That's it. Okay. All right. Hello.
No.
Hello. Hello. Can you see the stream?
Um, yes.
Okay. Now, how about this stream? How can I make the quality better? Oh yeah, no, it does have shit quality. Okay. All good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, cultural apotheosis, death. A death that combines the idea of cultural apotheosis and memory. Imagine all the cultures of the world. Suppose all these cultures can be quantified down to their adherents. These practitioners would be dotted along a globe of the world to showcase proper borders between cultures, whether they have small pockets halfway across the world or integrated populations among other cultures, with some people having both cultures at once, but to lesser degrees of either. However, notice in the acknowledgement of the hybrid, you bring into question improper data. How can anyone be one singular culture? Every part of the world is multicultural across time, in that different influences have existed since the inception of the population who lives there. You will be able to see it in their architecture, history, language, accent and dialect, their habits, their general mindset as it has been molded by the generations of the land dwellers, and know that their populations have changed hands multiple times in that place. This is true of all locales, thus, how can any one culture represent a whole landscape? If it is a gradient, then we believe in the concept of cultural equalities, then I argue no person has any claim to cultural presence and property. That individual would have to be a primordial monoculture / tribe, been kept in isolation forever, and upon us even having contact with these primordial cultures, they would have to suddenly be overwhelmed by a flux and push of new culture. Now break. Did you understand any of that?
Did you say?
Did you catch any of that?
Yeah. I mean, I have my headphones on. What you
Okay.
didn't get?
Okay. I gotta know whether it can even be understood. Because I feel like
What's
what.
the best test subject you have?
Okay, good. Just tell me at all whenever you're confused. So, all advancement forces analysis of the old. Pattern recognition takes humans far, and it should be more aware that these habits and rejections of analysis are corrosive to our own bodies and minds and communities. The only way people do not perform more analysis is if there is propaganda mechanisms to divert thought away from your own mind's survival pattern behavior. I wonder, has it gone on so long that there is truly an evolutionary line between the sheep and the predator? The predator could be a wolf, bear, coyote, eagle, or perhaps something more sinister that walks hairless and on two legs. Is there a predator class among us that has adapted, perhaps as far as evolved, not for the benefit of the whole population? Evolution is neutral, and in this case, I moralize it to be evil. The ability to coerce, deceive, and brutalize their kin? No. I won't entertain such eugenics wet dreams. Evil can exist at all levels of society. It can exist in any and every population. Corruption is capitulation to evil, whether it is behavior, deeds, actions, temptations, or people. What separates the evils across the population of the lower wealth gradient and the evils of the higher wealth gradient is power. Precisely, power over culture. A topic for another essay. No culture is invincible against other cultures' encroachment, and vice versa. Every culture plays an active role based on population influence, density, wealth, and ability to be held under scrutiny. Thus, we have to believe that all cultures are equal. Moreover, that if you expand outward and look at the whole of the populations on Earth, we appear to belong to a large, singular, diversely adopted mesh culture. One big culture, built and connected through vague connections and fields of attraction. Think about numbers. Bear with me, please. Consider 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, suppose that these are the largest, most believed in majorities of cultures. Christian, Islam, Buddhism as attributes of a religion of a culture. However, many cultures live within 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, all the way to 1.9, and then 2. Suddenly, this scope is broadened. If we apply this to the whole number set, well, you can imagine. Braid it up. Now, expand the scope again. What about the decimals between decimals, and those between those? It becomes a fractal. This nice little image, imagine, just fractal everywhere. This is culture. These are the buddings of cultural apotheosis. It is an infinitely diversifying fractal of cultural adaptation to different populations. Thus, the populations must grow on both sides in diversity in order to achieve more cultural apotheosis. However, I'm unsure if it must be sustained forever. That may be a logarithmic function that has a cap. Whatever the case, cultural diversification, integration, and equality already exists, but the goal is to make it thrive and grow more into an even larger fractal. Expand the amount of influential cultures in order to diversify and expand the overarching culture. And as we do this, it will create a universal population of immensely cultured individuals, lacking the elitist and racist connotations that come with that word in history. Actually, I do want to figure out a word for that. Something more other than cultured. Multicultural. Duh! Yeah, multicultural. Until they all evolve, or rather osmosize, into grander and more integrated, integratable multicultures, polycultures, unicultures, in order to achieve a greater level of diversity, acceptance, and necessary possibility for empathy across the whole of the universal population that will simply one day be cultural apotheosis. God is not singular. Religions are not singular. So why should culture be? Why should everything evolve up the hierarchy of cultures? This is the fools, devils, balls, tricksters, enemies, overlords line of thinking. The pathology is clear based on the reading above, I think. Anyways, that is the end of my rational, logical, and acceptable theory. On to my next. You are free to stop reading, but if you like afterlife rhetoric, continue at your leisure. Death is not the finality. It is the point, the infinity after finality. The last breath, the last cell's malfunction and decomposition, the last semblance of DNA remaining, the last possible fossil, the last bit of connectable matter in existence after eons of entropy, the last of anything of you that could possibly remain is the final point. It is what comes after that enthralls people. It is what enthralls anything that knows its own mortality. This is the point of consciousness, perhaps. I'm iffy on that one. Perhaps it is the cruelty of consciousness. It is cruel to be conscious. It is crueler even to have an ethical conscience. Sure, sometimes in some places, at some points, your conscience was ethical. Your beliefs were widely held. This applies to everyone and anything. But at all points in an ethics life, or spiritually generational population, there is a low. A painful, agonizing, terrible low that makes a person, people, population, world, universe never want to feel that way again. It is at this painful low that a shift is realized, necessary, and immediately implemented. The alternative is death. No one can live in this low for any amount of time. It is instant. So, you can think of it like limits involving infinity. This graph here. Imagine that blue line going down, descending into the zero, is a pathway in your life, and it's reaching an inevitable end. And then it suddenly changes into the new path of your life. Otherwise, you've died. And so, yeah, you have to choose. You just choose all sorts of different things that eventually lead to that next pathway. It's very quick. It immediately becomes the next part of the pathway. It is a total realignment of the pathway. The example goes even further. The ancients used math to describe death since long ago, so get with it. If you do anything to the limit function to add to its binality, you are only causing more fractured results with higher degrees of variance. But here's the thing. The infinite dotted line that composes the graph does not represent a singular culture. Every single point on the graph is a cultural attribute, a decision of fundamental attributes. Not values. I haven't defined that yet and don't want to, given its historical undertones. Based on things that are done by the population/person who is the graph itself. Thus, how can we not expand this into that fractal from earlier? If every point on the graph is a representative number, then the numbers between the infinite numbers form the fractal even more. I imagine some would have thought that this applies to a splicing in time, such as if we took all the present cultures of today, looked at them in a snapshot picture, and then tried to find the fractal in them, it would be sufficient. Time is also a factor of culture's formula, so no. Time is the biggest factor. It is the ultimate decider between what phases in and out of its passage. This is the effect of dead cultures. Not ghost cultures, which are the cultures who we only consider the death of, such as the fantastical Atlanteans. Some people imagine that as fantasy and fiction, some people consider them reality. This is the effect ghosts have on a population's imagination and memory across time. Still living, or perhaps undead cultures, are among us all the time. These are the cultures that are branches whose ends have stopped growing, been snipped off, or outright slaughtered. In another essay, I suggested that all queer people must connect with their queer culture from across time, because we are dead branches in genetic memory. We were born, possibly remembered genetically, and then died without passing on genetic code, memory, and new life. Queer people must analyze and pull from the queer culture of time in order to adopt the originators of those queer cultures as their parents, their ancestors. It is necessary for queer people to take on direct descendantship from their queer ancestors. Some of these people were good, some of them were bad, but in an argument about universality, you just need to accept, judge, and choose who to bring with you into the future. There is free will in all of this. Queer people are not the only ones with dead branches in their genetic memory, in their cultural memory. We all have dead branches we can pull from. We even have connections to other dead branches. How many of your ancestors knew my ancestors, and our ancestors knew their ancestors, and everybody's ancestors knew everybody's ancestors? And it spans into infinite diversity. Cultural apotheosis, when all culture is totally connected across time. This is the afterlife. When the afterlife becomes one with the present life, the future life becomes an infinite array of possibilities, not a singular point. The singular point was the origin. It was the Big Bang, the lowest point of cultures, the epistemology of beginning, which is to gape in one iteration. Nothing that gapes reseals back into a singular point. It spreads, continues to gape in other ways, in more ways, sometimes interjecting and fluxing, and I think I've made my point for your imaginations. You have the Big Bang Theory, where the beginning is that singular point in space-time that suddenly, or singular point in nothingness, that suddenly expanded and created a first dimension being a point, a second dimension being the lines of correlation between different points, and then the universe itself is in a third dimension of shape across time. Okay? What comes after the inflection zone of death? What is the difference between life, afterlife, and pre-life? What was there before the point, before the beginning? The zeroth dimension. Nothingness, an abyss, absolute pointlessness. So, in order to get to higher dimensions, we must first begin and then undergo an infinity of beginnings, until every beginning is integrated with every pathway between beginning, and so on. This is pre-life into life. So, does life into afterlife exist? Would afterlife be, it's the fourth dimension? Well, okay, pre-life is the zeroth dimension. The beginning, the point, is the first dimension. A singular slate of space-time is the second dimension, a plane, just a plane on a graph. Shape of slates, planes, second dimension makes, oh, a shape of slates, planes, second dimensions make up a third dimension. And the outlines of that shape are dependent on time. The fourth dimension is whatever is between the shapes, whatever goes through every point, every first dimension of the life. And I have a little video for you here with Patty Smith, and I think she gives a pleasant understanding of it. Now, I can only hope that I don't get copywritten. But oh, maybe put on captions. All right, Catherine, what do you think? Can I play it? Actually, you know what? I'm gonna let this go, and I'm gonna get more water. Hello. Okay. All right. So, what's the verdict on this video? Can I put on the sound? Is Ass Grass Production gonna cancel me? You know what? Okay, I mean, hey, you can tell where it's on. Who here is after listening to La Ugilada? That's where I found her. And so Ass Grass Production, go check them out.
1,000, 10,000, 50,000 people, 50,000 minds, 50,000 subconsciousnesses that I can dip into. I mean, the more people,
How poetic is that I stop at that
the more
point?
I submit, the greater show it's going to be, the greater we're going to be. I mean, I don't like audiences that sit there and act cool like this, because nothing's going to happen.
I think about liberation and stuff, liberation of yourself. There's like a huge liberation game. A lot of people are walking around saying how free they are, saying all these dangerous sex words to demonstrate.
Yeah, but if you talk about anything too much, if you spend too much time defining what you do, or telling people that you're free,
Okay. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Alright, so, continuing. When multicultures die, they are missing from the time of cultures. New multicultures can form at any point in time, but they must start from a singular point in time. However, the time between multicultures is not indicative of the birth of multicultures. The birth of multicultures comes from nothingness, and at a singular point in interaction between an individual and a thing in existence, anything, it becomes a culture. And upon further interaction and additional people in the population, the more they will develop a memory of culture and consciousness. So, with time as the constrictor of the lifespan of multicultures, the afterlife is that perceived nothingness between all things by the multicultural populations. It is the space between atoms, between the electron to the nucleus, between stars, between planets, between molecules, between everything and anything we perceive in existence. Would it not be beautiful that when consciousness leaves a person, when death of cultural awareness has occurred? Don't hold me to that term. We'll just call her CA for now. There's a lot of stuff around cultural awareness. The consciousness transcends life and into afterlife. Afterlife is infinite beyond our scope. It is an ever-existing, ever-present, omnipresent layer, or inside of, or presence among layer, presence, state, effect of life that goes so much further beyond life. It includes places in time that we perceive to be nothingness, but could be an infinite multitude of things within afterlife. Thus, what are these myths we have about our afterlives? Some people think they will go into nothingness, the same as with birth. Although, then, what is the ghost of your memory? People will either remember your life and be reminded of your death, or think of your death and then wonder about your life. This is the origination of myth and legend. Thus, how can death be nothingness? Death is incredibly lasting across time. Your consciousness? That enters an afterlife, which another person might think as heaven. Eternal prayer? Not every single person has the same exact definition of prayer in their mind. So when they pray and they think of the afterlife, it's actually an entire congregation of after myth lives. However, every idea of the afterlife has its merit and equal necessity for recognition. It is included in the memory of multiculture across time. Afterlife is a strange place. We cannot conceive of it, not currently. I said earlier that the lowest point of a culture is a schism point. Either they live on with completely different cultural attributes such decisions within/among them, or the point of death claims them. So, what happens at the point of cultural consciousness when they ascend into afterlife? Life cannot ascend into afterlife, it must transcend. A total transformation of core principles, realities, and cognitive decisions. Do we only reach a glimpse into afterlife at this point of decision making? No. I think once that point of transcendence occurs in time, a choice is made. The person who experiences the point of transcendence in time, they either consciously or instinctually deny life among afterlife. Some choose to live there longer, and may choose to go back to life or not whenever they please. Consciousness is an osmotic presence across pre-life, life, and afterlife. It permeates through everything, absolutely everything, except the original zero life before them all. Do not talk to me about unlife. Oh shit. What the fuck is unlife? Tell you what, keep that in mind. Deets who like necromancers and zombies. Wait. Thus, if consciousness can transcend among the different layers of lives, they negative themselves and enter unlife. Does this become logical fallacy due to fantasy, or a meta layer of conscious recognition but unwilling belief in said unlife? If you've gotten this far and you should have already made the decision, the choice, as to whether I'm completely, ultimately wrong or right. I want to focus on the gradient between, and then break through the gradient into everything else. Alright, another video with Patty Smith is just the same interview, but the million membrane stuff. There's a million infinite membranes to break through across a person's life, and once you enter afterlife, there is no more constraint of time. You can be anywhere at any time, and then, why could there not be more than the afterlife? Another dimension, another intersection between lives. Convention dictates post-life, grammatically. I actually did not find a word that precedes or transcends post as a prefix, so I don't think the English language has another dimension of this. Whichever population in the world across time created and adopted a language that includes a transcendent version of the given lives. They have the tools to transcend and become afterlife culture adopters. When every singular population in existence adopts afterlife culture, they have the chance to, in the same pattern, transcend and adopt post-life culture. If I ever figure out what the hell they're saying in that language, in post-life language, I'll let you know. Regardless, this circles back to the idea of language as a tool to transcend. Language is fundamental to cognitive function. All creatures in existence have language. It is how they exist, how they create culture among each other. They fall along the same spectrum of pre-life, life, afterlife, so on, but not within consciousness. It makes up a big portion of culture, but I would argue that language is a sort of mode of transport for culture. The language center of our brains, the Wernicke's area, I might be willing to say the whole left hemisphere, and then, yes, maybe branch it out to the right hemisphere, and then the whole brain, etc., fractal it out, but we'll get into it later. For now, I believe that the Wernicke's area is the area that comprehends the mode of transport that is language, and thus is a gatekeeper between cultures. It filters that which is allowed in, and I have no idea how to change that. It is the place that receives projection, transference, osmosis of culture through language, and thus lives. Perhaps in order for a person to transcend into afterlife, they must undergo transmutation. Perhaps death is the point of transmutation for consciousness. Cells and bodies do not transmute, they just decay into higher orders of entropy. Thus, how could you be able to transmute the physical into another dimension? I think once we get into this territory with the transmuting, we get a little off topic, and I'm not interested in that. Not right now. Which means I think I'm done for now. Shit hits. Hey. Okay. Huh? What?
Slap your mama.
Slap your mama? Oh my god. But yeah, that's what that Eddie made me do. Made me say.
The power it granted you.
Girl. Yeah. Well, what now? Yeah. Was it received? Was it understood?
To the best of my capabilities.
Okay.
In my current state, yes.
Okay. Well. All right. I think that's the end of the stream.